Hello and welcome to the Nexus. Today's show, Putin 2018. Russia's president now wants 6 more years in the Kremlin. So here in the Nexus, we are focusing on 3 things: voting rights and wrongs. How does Putin keep winning? And why is he so popular when the economy is in such a mess? Poker face, he is a hard man to read, Mr. Putin, and he's outplayed the West on Syria, Crimea, and maybe even the US elections. And Action Man, how the hardest world leader reveals his secret to winning a street fight. That's all ahead here in the Nexus. Hello, I'm Matthew Moore, and in the Nexus today we are looking at Vladimir Putin, the president and the man. We've invited 3 specialists to help us. In Prague, we have the Russian vlogger Dmitry Ivanov. He has more than 1 million followers. Here in London, the former Kremlin advisor Alexandra Nekrassov. And in Paris, Craig Copetas, who spent years covering the Kremlin and wrote the highly acclaimed and entertaining book Bear Hunting with the Politburo. So, now we're all gathered, let's begin with voting rights and wrongs and how Putin keeps on winning.
New Year's Eve, 1999. The world was counting down to a new millennium. In Moscow, an ailing President Boris Yeltsin decided this was the moment to resign, handing power to his chosen successor, Prime Minister Vladimir Putin. As the world celebrated a new millennium, Russia was moving into a new era. Putin won the presidential election just 3 months later in the first round. With a strong record on law and order and a tough approach to Chechnya, he won more than half the vote. His opponents cried foul. When Putin was inaugurated for the first time, the world was a very different place. The class of 2000 included Britain's fresh-faced Prime Minister Tony Blair, Germany's Chancellor Gerhard Schroeder, France's smooth Jacques Chirac, and sax-loving Bill Clinton was still US President. They've all long gone, but Putin's still here. In fact, with 18 years in charge, he's been at the top longer than any other G20 leader. In second place and way behind is Angela Merkel, with just 12 years. In the next election in 2004, with the economy stable, a popular Putin won a second term with an even bigger majority. But international observers complain that the state-controlled media again clearly favoured Putin.
Putin controls the media. Russia doesn't have a free media, so by the time they get through whipping everybody up, he can maintain popularity longer than he should.
In 2008, Putin had reached the 2-term limit, so Dmitry Medvedev kept his seat warm for the next 4 years and made Putin his prime minister. But there was little doubt who was really in charge, and normal service resumed in 2012, when Putin became president for a 3rd term, which was now extended to 6 years.
Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin!
The opposition believed the vote was rigged again, and this time thousands of people protested. Dozens were injured and hundreds arrested. Putin's supporters organised a counter-protest which was many times larger, but some said they'd been paid or forced to come. Running again in 2018, his approval rating is still very high and serious opposition is thin on the ground. There is little doubt he will win. The only question is, by how much?
Well, let's go to Paris, and Craig Copetas is there. Craig, simple question. How is he winning these elections?
He controls the playing field. There's a concept in Russia called strach. It means fear. And since the days of the czars, all the Russias have been ruled through fear. He's also made sure that everyone's been fed. They get bread. When Russians don't get bread, that's what triggers revolutions in Russia. It's what happened in 1917. It's what basically happened in 1990 when prices kind of got a bit too high. There's a lot of festering things underneath the surface, but that's essentially why he controls the playing field.
Okay, well,
of course, he's wiped out all of his opponents,
One of
which
the
is an
key
old
things
Bolshevik tactic.
is control of the media. Let's go to Dmitry Ivanov now, who's a vlogger, as I said, in Prague. Controlling the media is so important in these elections.
I guess it has been very important since the day NTV was shut down, when they spoke truth about Dubrovka, about the terrorists, about Beslan, about all that things that Putin messed himself into with his FSB friends, KGB friends, doesn't matter. This didn't change a little. So now we're facing that they are looking down the internet, they're trying to control the internet officially and unofficially.
Alexander Nekrassov, if I can come to you just really quickly, is it also your opinion that it's not a real democracy and that Putin controls the playing field?
Well, I don't understand what it means to control the playing field in Russia, because everyone controls the playing field in every country. Look at any country in Europe, look at America. The press there is also controlled and tightly censored. So this is not the case. I think the reason why Putin is still popular in Russia, although I doubt it's 85%, is because the West is doing everything to make him popular. And when the West attacks him, that pushes his popularity upwards. And when the West invaded, and I say invaded, Ukraine, and organized that coup, that was the end.
Okay, we're going to come to that in a minute. You talked about popularity. Let's go to Dmitry. How popular do you think Putin is? Just his approval rating, what would you guess it to be?
He is not popular at all now, because people already understood that TV is lying. All these fairy tales about Putin's greatness, Putin against the West, Putin overplays Trump, Putin overplays Obama. This is all for people who don't understand anything except that Putin is great. Well, so they live in poverty, and the only hope they have is that sometimes something will happen, just like fairy tale happens.
The thing is, Dmitry, we have the figures, at least a Russian poll shows Putin to be about 81%, and Western polls don't come down much lower than that. Compare him to Donald Trump, guess where he's at? Something like 32%. Craig, I know you're highly skeptical of these things and you don't think they're a decent barometer of anything. Tell us why.
Well, your polling, the object of polling is to basically see if there should be a new leader. And the only poll in the Soviet Union that has ever had any steam was what you read in the newspaper Krasny Vezdya, Red Star. That's the military newspaper every day. I read that every day. And I have seen no indication in Red Star that Putin is anything but the most popular person in Russia. Why is that important? Because no regime change, no revolution in the Soviet Union has ever happened without the backing of the army. It just doesn't happen.
Okay, let's...
So as long as Putin has the army on his side, he controls the playing field.
All right, let's take it to the streets now and find out what ordinary Russians have to say about Mr. Putin running again.
I support this decision. I think he's been a good president and it will be good to have him further.
I think that one shouldn't change horses in mainstream. Another term will help the whole of Russia get stronger.
It means that we have 6 years of a not very joyful life ahead of us.
I like it, it's fine by me, so I hope he'll be the president again.
For 20 years, and what? All the same. Everything is bad.
Well, an interesting question there from that final young man. Alexander Nekrassov, if I can just ask the same question, how much longer can Vladimir Putin keep going, and who would replace him?
Well, to be honest with you, it's very difficult to say who would replace him, because the opposition in Russia is very divided. There is no specific figure you can relate to and say this is the guy who will replace him. But I must say that I think Putin has overstayed his welcome. I think it's just way too long for any leader to stay there for, it's now, what, 17 years?
Yeah.
And I think the Kremlin is already looking for a replacement. I think that Putin at his annual press conference with journalists was looking you know, to be honest, tired and worn out.
Yeah, we have that picture. We can bring it up live right now. He's going through his end-of-year 5-hour marathon speech. What have you got to say about that?
And I think, you know, it's a very bland performance. There is nothing new he can offer. He is running for president in March next year, but you don't feel any pre-election fever. You don't feel him offering anything new to the Russians. I think we are looking at a tired regime. I think he's on his way out. He might stay for another 6 years, but he's not changing anything.
Let me take it over to Craig Copetas in Paris. Craig, the important thing is what will happen once Putin goes? Will there be chaos?
Well, you know, there's two lies in life, and whenever you hear them, you never believe what anyone says. The first is, I don't get drunk on champagne, and the second one is, I can tell you what's going to happen in Russia. Nobody knows, but if you're looking at regime change there, I don't see it happening short term, and I'll tell you why. There were 243 political strikes in Russian cities in 1916 before the revolution. The next year, January and February 1917, there were more than 1,000 strikes and protests a month. That's the kind of fomentation you need in Russia to create some kind of new regime. And you just don't see it there now.
Okay.
Doesn't exist. It exists in the West.
Craig, I know
you hear a lot of the exile screaming, but they have no
between
truck.
Putin and a chess player. And arguably the world's greatest chess player, Garry Kasparov, who now campaigns for democracy in Russia, hates it when he's compared to a chess player. He says Putin's more like a poker player.
Playing with Putin on this geopolitical board is more like playing poker, not chess. Because Putin, again, he doesn't care about the rules, you know, but he's very good in bluffing. I say that he always, you know, can win by having a weak hand. He has the pair of 6. And he acts as if he has flesh royale.
Well, Putin certainly won a few rounds of political poker against his European and American rivals. Here's a few more key examples.
The inscrutable poker face of Vladimir Putin. It has served him well over the years against his rivals, who find him a hard man to read.
I looked a man in the eye. I was able to get a sense of his soul.
I won't be given a little reset button like Hillary. Here, press this piece of plastic.
We worked hard to get the right Russian word. Do you think we got it?
You get the drone.
And the West has got it wrong on several occasions. Putin appeared to have a weak hand when he bet on Bashar al-Assad, who was being shunned by the world. But Putin upped the stakes with airstrikes and sending in troops, while the West hesitated. This week, 2 years after Russia sent in forces, Putin essentially told his soldiers, mission accomplished. Little surprise then that Assad was grateful to his most powerful backer. One of Putin's biggest gambles came in 2014, when his ally Viktor Yanukovych was ousted from Ukraine. In all the chaos, Russian troops in unmarked combat gear entered Crimea, annexing the peninsula and calling the West bluff. In the West, there was plenty of talk and sanctions.
The United States is imposing new sanctions in key sectors of the Russian economy.
But no attempt to take Crimea back. The winner takes it all. More recently, Putin's been accused of playing his trump card.
I've just received a call from Secretary Clinton. She congratulated us, it's about us, on our victory.
But whose victory was it? US intel says Putin played a part, accusing him of ordering an online influence campaign to help Trump. Both Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin deny any such thing.
What he believes is what he believes.
Putin is now accusing the West of trying to interfere with his election, pointing to the IOC's decision to ban Russia from next year's Olympic Games. A genuine complaint, or just another round of political poker?
Well, a quick question for all of the panel now. The CIA, the NSA and the FBI have all concluded that Vladimir Putin ordered a campaign to affect the American election. If anyone doesn't agree with that, just raise your hand. Okay, everyone agrees that he did it then. Okay, let's go to Craig Copetas in Paris. Do you think that do you think that it's true the other way around, though, that the Trump campaign colluded with the Russians to win the election? I know there's a special counselor, Robert Mueller, asking this exact question, but what are your thoughts?
I don't believe the Trump campaign had the capacity to deal effectively with the Russians or with Putin. I think they stumbled into this. They were trying to get some information of the Trump campaign, and they didn't know what they were doing. As far as Putin was concerned, the attempt to affect the U.S. election campaign goes back to what the old Comintern tried to do, which was since 1915, 1916, 1917, tried to affect elections and carry out spying in foreign countries. There's nothing new here. We're just seeing more of it because it was done over the internet and done with email. But remember something, back in the day, what they affected change with was with stuff like telegraph and radio. And that was the big thing of the day, and it caused just as much as a consternation back in the early, middle 20th century as it is today.
You know, Craig, it's a bit weird. When Donald Trump was asked if he believed Vladimir Putin, we heard a little bit in that report. We're going to hear a little bit more now. He tried to have it both ways. He said, he believed Putin, he believed his own intel. Let's have a listen.
I believe that President Putin really feels, and he feels strongly, that he did not meddle in our election. What he believes is what he believes.
Alexander Nekrassov, what do you think when you hear the President of the United States trying to have it both ways? Why is he doing that? Is this political expediency? He wants to just move on with Vladimir Putin to something else?
Well, I think, what I'm hearing now about Putin winning a game of poker and outsmarting the West, I don't see any examples of that. I think Putin lost on all counts. The influence of Russia around its neighbors is completely demolished. He lost Ukraine by gaining Crimea, which is rubbish, because basically Russia has lost one of the most important allies it ever had, Ukraine. I don't understand where you lot get this information
And you don't think
from.
Assad still standing is really down to
Vladimir
Vladimir
Putin?
Putin?
I'm sorry. Syria is nothing compared to Ukraine. Who cares who stands there now? Putin's games with Syria, this is just PR to prove that...
The whole world was getting involved in Syria. No, this was a big geopolitical move. Let's go to Dmitry Ivanov. We'll come back to you, Alexander. 1 second. Dmitry, come in.
Yeah, I just think that Syria is not just PR. It's also a huge investment in oil prices regulation, because we know the reason why there are wars with ISIS, what's on their territory, and how long is this pipe with oil, and how much does ISIS have money because of this pipe. Also, speaking about Putin's wins and losses, I completely agree with the previous speaker. I think that we lost respect and lost our allies, such as Belarus, such as Kazakhstan, such as Ukraine, such as Armenia, such as Georgia, and all this happened throughout these years, step by step.
All right, look, the both Russians on the panel think that Ukraine was a big own goal. Let's go to Craig Copetas. If taking Crimea was such a big own goal, why do it?
Russia offers the world rhetoric. They don't have cash. If you want cash, you go to the Chinese. They'll give you cash. They're investing all over the world. Russia doesn't have the money. Number two, we have to go back to this poker player analogy for a moment. Putin is not a poker player. He's a blackjack player. To play poker, you need to know strategy. The Chinese are poker players. Putin deals with brute luck. And that's how you play blackjack. And the reason he is winning, and he is winning the rhetorical battle, is because he's playing against his chief adversary, who's a failed casino owner by the name of Donald Trump. That's the scenario playing out here in gambling terms.
Well,
Russia has nothing to offer.
That analogy fits incredibly well, given that Donald Trump really did actually run casinos. One last question then, before we move on to Action Man. What are his geopolitical priorities right now, Craig?
Putin's main political priority right now is to remain in power, to help install a successor that's not going to put him behind bars, who is going to offer him a pardon. Remember, Putin came to power only because he gave Yeltsin a free ride, no criminal investigations into any corruption Yeltsin might have done while he was running the country. It's a matter of survival. Putin doesn't like to be humiliated. He's fearful of humiliation. He wants to get out with the skin on his back and his money in the bank. Okay. And that's how he's going to spend what looks to be his final term in office.
Okay, Craig, we have covered Putin, the president, as much as we can in the time available. Let's turn now to Putin, the action man. Here's the bit where the Russian president talks about how to win a street fight and become an international man of mystery.
The streets of Leningrad taught me one thing. If a fight is inevitable, you should strike first.
Я считаю себя обычным человеком. Обычно не назовешь, естественно. Но все-таки я живу нормальной, обычной жизнью.
Whoa, what a guy. Alexander, this is the bit where we get you to smile, hopefully. We've just been watching all these images of the action man that is Vladimir Putin. He's swimming, he's shooting, he's driving fast cars, he's riding horses without a shirt on. Do Russians actually fall for this macho stuff?
Well, makes you proud to be a Russian, doesn't it? Well, it's all PR. You know, I was one of the first spin doctors in the Kremlin. And I can tell you, as a former spin doctor of the Kremlin, this is all just PR. It does look sometimes very childish. This man is no action hero, of course, and no. Most Russians smile about it. And I think, to be honest with you, it's time for the Kremlin people to stop these games, PR games, and start to really show Putin as at least dealing with some of the issues which are very serious and need to be tackled.
He was an agent. Was it in the FSB or the KGB? Was he an action man there, or was he sort of a desk jockey?
No, he wasn't. I don't think many people remember his role in the KGB. I think he was sort of a desk job mostly.
Not a James Bond. He was more of a
no. That's
more of a Mr. Bean.
Nothing to do with James Bond. And I think, you know, they've done it. They overdid this action man image. You must understand the main idea of Putin's whole reign and power is to keep the status quo in place. This status quo was given to him by Yeltsin, and he keeps it still in place. All the same people are still controlling the money, the economy.
Let me ask you one more question. As someone who appears to be roughly of the same generation as the president, what's he talking about when he says the tough streets of Leningrad taught him a lesson?
Well, again,
were they tough in those days?
Yeah, well, it's a PR stunt again, because the days of Leningrad when he was a young man were actually crime-free and very quiet. So again, we're going back into this action hero figure. I think it's now, you know, causing more smiles and sarcasm rather than adoration. He needs to tackle problems. He can't continue to present himself as an action man but doesn't do anything.
Thank you all very much. Well, we have run out of time, so I just have to thank all of our guests, Dmitry Ivanov, Alexandra Nekrassov and Craig Copetas. Thanks all for your contributions. We'll give the last word to the Russian president. He says, see this? This is how much I care. Well, that's all for now, but next week we're looking at a tech billionaire whose creation is said to be ripping apart society. See you then. Thanks for watching.